You're stuck in traffic. Notifications are lighting up your phone. You're thinking about work. You're thinking about what you're going to eat once you get home. About something that someone said to you 3 weeks ago. And in the middle of all that noise, a single question slips through the cracks. Is all this living really worth dying for? It sounds quite bleak initially, maybe even a little dramatic. But that question lingers, doesn't it? Because on some level, you feel it. You feel that absurd rhythm of your life. You feel how fast it's moving and how much energy you're spending and how exhausted you are chasing things that you're not even sure that you want. And underneath all of that, the truth sits like a weight. One day you will die, and one day this all will be over. So, what are you really doing with your life? Albert Camus said that the only serious philosophical question is whether or not life is worth living. Not how do I get rich, not what should I do with my career, or how should I find love. No. The real question is whether it's worth waking up at all or not waking up. Because your existence is absurd. You're born into a world that you didn't ask for, and the world didn't ask for you. You build meaning in a universe that is indifferent to it. You suffer and you age and then you die. And yet we keep going. Albert Camus called this the absurd condition. It's the confrontation between our desire for clarity and the chaotic silence of the world. So I'll ask you again, is all this really worth dying for? And the answer to that should simply be, it depends on how you define living. You can't exist without living. To be honest, most people aren't living, however. They're just existing, they're defaulting day by day. They've traded their agency and their mind for some sort of routine. They've traded passion for safety and their curiosity for comfort. They're not making those choices, instead they're simply following instructions. You get a job right outside of school because you're told to. You chase money because it's what everyone else does. You go out because you're afraid to be alone and isolated. You stay in because you're afraid of failing. You do what you are supposed to do, and you convince yourself that this is what it actually means to live. However, if you zoom out, if you just stop for a second and you ask yourself why, it starts to get quiet, the noise starts to fade. And the answer isn't clear. That silence is terrifying. The silence, however, is truth, no matter how terrifying it is. You can sleepwalk through a whole life that way, until death finally taps you on your shoulder and you realize that you never actually lived. You simply avoided dying. Now, Camus didn't answer that absurd question with a yes or a no. Instead, he answered that with a defiance. He answered it with rebellion and said, yes, life is meaningless. Yes, it does end. But the answer is to live regardless. It's to live without asking for permission, to love knowing that love could one day end, to create without needing validation, to walk into uncertainty with your eyes wide open. And that isn't some motivational fluff that I'm just spouting off once again. Instead, I'm challenging you. If you really want to know if life is really worth living or dying for, ask yourself, are you choosing your days every single day, or are you just surviving? Are you doing what lights you up and you find passion and enjoyment in, or are you just doing what numbs you enough to get by? Do you really, really want to be here right now, or are you simply just too afraid to leave? There's a culture built around looking alive instead of being alive. People collect their achievements as if they're trophies, not because we care about the thing itself, but because we're afraid. We're afraid of what it says about us if we stop. We post our highlights because the silence feels like invisibility, and you measure your life in metrics, things like followers, dollars, titles, instead of actual moments and meetings. And the tragedy is that some people will spend their entire existence performing a life instead of living one. But the brutal truth is that death doesn't care if you played that part well. It doesn't care how admired you were. It doesn't care how productive you were, how many people envied you, or how many people you envy. When it comes, the question will be so simple. Was it really worth it? People act as if the goal is to be happy all the time, like any sort of discomfort is instant failure. However, that isn't living. That's just anesthesia. That's numbing yourself so you don't feel the inevitable pain. You don't grow in safety. You don't feel joy without knowing any sort of grief. You don't become real unless something breaks you first. Life will have to hurt, and sometimes it will gut you. It'll take people you love away from you. It'll throw you into chaos. And still, you have to understand that you are standing here. That isn't weakness. That is your answer to the absurd. That is proof that even in this meaningless world, you chose meaning anyway. You showed up. Now, Soren Kierkegaard was a philosopher that came far before Albert Camus did. He talked about something which he called the existential leap, the moment you stop asking for some sort of certainty and you start living by choice. The moment you say, I don't know where this will lead me, but I'm going to go regardless. That is the leap that makes your life yours. You'll stop waiting for some sign, you'll stop following that path. You'll stop outsourcing your soul and you will jump. You'll jump into risk, you'll jump into love, and eventually into your own voice. Is that jump terrifying? Yes, of course. Imagine jumping off a cliff without seeing what's on the other side. But it's also the only way to cross that gap between existing and living. So what actually makes it worth it? What makes this short, strange, beautiful mess of a life worth dying for? It shouldn't be the big things. It should be the overlooked ones. That one moment of real laughter that shook your chest. That song that made you cry and you don't even know why you did. That conversation at 1 a.m. where somebody finally got it. They finally understood you. That second of stillness when everything felt okay. Those fragments, those seconds, that's it. They are the true existence. Those are the answers to Camus' question. You don't need some grand reason. You just need a reason. You make life worth it by choosing to live like it matters, even when you know it ends, especially because it ends. So I'm going to ask you again, is all this living really worth dying for? And I'm going to give you an answer this time. It's only worth if you stop running. It's only worth if you stop waiting. It's only worth it if you stop performing and you start living as if your time is real. There is an abundance of time. However, as soon as that time leaves, as soon as that time is gone, it will never come back. So one day that time won't be real. One day it won't exist. It will all be gone. And when that day comes, your answer may be simple. Yes, all this living was really worth dying for. Thank you.